why do we fall for people like Sadia Khan? And as you know, she was exposed and showed her true character. It was already very obvious how she was in her Instagram on the comments from people that called her out on things already years and months ago, but people didn't see it. They were not listening to that. And I think there's a couple of reasons and a couple of things. So the first thing is really that pretty much all the social portals, the algorithm works the same way. It works on engagement. And the higher polarity you have, the higher engagement you farm. And the higher engagement you farm, the more viral you go. And this is the reason why we have right now a culture, a social media culture, in which toxic people surface. You see a lot of toxic people are surfacing because they are the ones who force the most engagement in these algorithms. Especially the polarizing content is the one that rises the fastest. So that's why you will see certain influencers put out polarizing content. And that's why you will see in Sadia Khan or other social media people use basically very provocative titles that catch the audience for that engagement, for the click-through rate, and all of these other things to really trigger the algorithm, and thereby the video surface very quickly. And we equate attention, and here comes the big problem. This is a human psychology. We equate attention with competence, and that's a huge mistake, because actually the most competent people are often the ones that have the least amount of attention. So unless they come to a point where they're already famous. So if there's, let's say, an Albert Einstein and he works, in a Swiss patent office, nobody knows him. Nobody knows about Albert Einstein. But only if he gets the broad kind of public relations or press from international journalists, then he suddenly becomes famous. And then he becomes very famous, okay? But that's very rare. So you have inventors, you have smart people, you have competent people in whatever field of they're in, and they rise very fast when they get full recognition. But there's millions of them that don't get the recognition. And if you think about, for example, Jordan Peterson, the reason Jordan Peterson became big is because he rose to fame at exactly the point in time where there was that, gendering and transgenderism, and losing his university position in Canada. That's where he rose to fame. Otherwise, nobody would know about Jordan Peterson. So these things are kind of luck. For him, it was kind of luck. But for people like Sadia or Andrew Tate, it's mostly calculated positioning, and by using social media algorithms to rise to fame. And the easiest way to crack the code right from the beginning is going on a podcast by someone who already cracked that algorithm. And then you just take over basically that momentum. And it's interesting because when you look at Sadia Khan's YouTube channel, she's not even that popular. She has maybe 20 or 30,000 views per video, but she did have videos where she had 2 million or 1 million views in the past. But if you look at the last couple of videos, she isn't even that famous for how many people actually know her. So that's also interesting. And to be quite honest, as an expert, I'm an absolute expert in energy fields, psychoenergetic fields, and relationships, and all of these things. I am very disconnected with what she's actually saying. So when I listen to one of her videos, I have to force myself to watch it. It really doesn't resonate with almost anything that she says doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't feel authentic, doesn't feel true, it doesn't feel powerful. And by the way, there is a woman. I think she's African, but her name is Pearly. It's not Pearl, it's Pearly. So it's Pearl, IE, and then triple E. And she just blew up, I think, because she had a video with 1 million views. Look at her. She seems, in comparison to Sadia Khan, she seems like much less flamboyant, you would say, or eccentric. But the stuff she talks about, the way she talks about it, is she really cracked the code. You really feel she cracked the code, and it feels like she's literally talking to your child wound as she's speaking about relationship advice. And it's interesting, I think relationship advice is something that really will keep blowing up a lot on the internet. So if you're positioning yourself as an influencer, I think relationship advice is a good way to go, because it's literally like where most people have problems now. They might have figured out money or not, finances or not, but they haven't figured out relationships. And I think it's getting more and more difficult. And I think there's a couple of red pills that a lot of men don't want to see. I think there's a lot of red pills, let's call them more like black pills, that men just don't want to see and women don't want to confess to. And one of these statistics is, it's going to sound harsh and a lot of people don't want to hear this, but this year, I went out onto the street and I started to speak to women. On the beach, I was in South Spain. I spoke to women on the beach, in the supermarket, on the street. I'll just say hello, start a conversation. And I noticed something super interesting. So because I was a little bit shocked, because there is a cultural shock which we are trying to refuse as men. There is a cultural shock we are trying to refuse as men. We're trying not to see it. We're blind to it. We are purposefully blind to it. And most women will agree when I say this, is women are not dependent on men anymore. And this is something that men do not want to hear. And it's an absolute fact. And of course, you cannot sell a course by giving you this black pill. You cannot sell a course. So women are not dependent on men anymore. And then men are like, okay, I'm not getting pussy, so I have to really figure out how to do this. Okay, I need to self-focus. I need to become bro culture. I need to get muscle. I need to get a six-pack. I need to have billions. I need to have a running business. I need 12 passive income streams. Dude, you didn't get the message. Women are not dependent on men anymore. There is no like, oh, I'm gonna get, to this position and then women are really interested. Women are picking men for sexual experiences, not necessarily for true relationship. They're picking men for sexual experiences when it suits them, how it suits them, whichever way it suits them. And they can drop them like flies, and they do that. And the only time they're truly falling for a fixed relationship, if he truly checks all the boxes, right? So, and this is the true reason. And there's tremendous amounts of women who don't even want kids. They don't want a relationship, and they're just enjoying their life. And men then immediately turn around and say, well, when she's 40 years old, she'll be living with cats. Dude, if she's 20, 25, 30, she doesn't give a rat's ass. She's just enjoying her life and traveling around. She might sleep with men who trigger her here and there while she's traveling or something, but it doesn't mean that she wants you. And this is something that a lot of men don't want to swallow, this black pill. And whenever I see women now choosing men, it's those men that, let's just call them, I'm trying to find a word for this. Let's just call them like the unusual pack. They're the unusual men that are good looking, that have a specific attractive lifestyle, which is not by design. So they didn't plan this, but it's just like how they are. And they're just usually above average good looking, right? And this is something that you cannot fix. You can do, as a man, you can do whatever you want. If you don't fall within that category, you're going to have much less success with women than you used to, than these men used to. Okay? And this is something that a lot of men don't want to understand. But there is one thing which is tremendously attractive for women. There's one thing which is tremendously attractive for women. And that is when you have kind of like, let's call it, I'm going to have to find a word for it because I don't think that word yet exists. So I need a neologism for this, but I already do have a couple of neologisms for other things, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to find something. It's basically I'm gonna describe it like the feeling that exudes. It's kind of like the high flying. I'm just gonna try to find words. It's kind of like the high flying success dude. It's not, that's not the right word. It's like it's not high flying. It's because when you think about somebody who's successful, you maybe think about, like very successful, you maybe think like an entrepreneur who has his own company, who makes millions and so forth. No. What I mean is the guy who is successful in whatever he's doing, right? But he's on a trajectory, but he, at the same time, he has that kind of like he's floating above society, kind of like, okay, but not in an intense way, not like Andrew Tate, where he's still very much within the matrix. It feels like he's playing. That guy is kind of like the person who's above things. He's above it, kind of like above the whole thing, whereas he's not so much fighting within it, but he's kind of above it. And what there is kind of like it's not a disengaged like fuck you money attitude. It's more like not only it's kind of like I'm living my purpose, but it's at the same time it's almost like you were chosen. Do you know what I mean? You almost like you were chosen. Like you were chosen and everything is just flying high and it's working and you're tremendously enjoying your life, okay, in this way. Okay, I'm gonna explain exactly what I mean. I'm just trying to describe it a little bit. This type of man is extremely attractive to women because most people, not just women, feel they're slaves, feel they are confined with whatever life gives them. Health, money, work, relationships. They feel confined and they are attracted to, it's almost like a soul thing. They're attracted to souls which don't seem to be victims. You're not victim of your existence. Okay? So this man seems to float above it. He's like not victim of his existence. And you know who these type of men are? These are the Bruce Willises before he got sick. He's like, the way he just acts, the way he laughs, the way he, is, those men, even though he's not, maybe the most attractive person in the world, he exudes this kind of like floating above it and just almost like life is a joke, but still things work out perfectly for this person. And those men are hugely attractive to women. So if you're not good looking, this is what you want to aim for. But you have to also recognize, and I talk about this a lot, it doesn't mean that it's true love. But you're going to have a lot of women that are going to think this is true love. But what they're actually feeling is it's a little bit like you can induce certain emotions in people accidentally or on purpose, where they feel like highly intrigued by you. So one thing might be, for example, that you're this high-flying, successful individual, or for example, that you're enjoying life so much. Or there's another option, for example, because you're giving her so much attention. So if you give her a lot of attention and you're like showering her with, different things, it doesn't have to be like only compliments and money and whatever, but she gets a high from this attention. Because today in life, we hardly really get deep attention. We hardly ever get deep attention. So because of this individualism, everybody about themselves, so when you suddenly give someone that much attention, they either, when they're toxic, they just abuse that attention, okay? Or on the other hand, they'll just be attracted to that. And the moment you pull back, the moment you change the image back to, how you really are, how you normally are, then the relationship immediately falls apart, because she is not the high that she got from that attention that already fell away. So there's a lot of, the thing with relationships and energies and connections with other people, it's so complex and multifaceted that you cannot just go out there and say like just high value man, low value woman, high value woman, low value man. You cannot just use these type of descriptions and be like, that's it, that's how it works, because it's much, much more complicated. But what I like, for example, about this Pearly person is she goes deep into kind of like the psychoenergetic, traumatic kind of experiences that you had as a child, and how you then use that to find your partner. And it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Most people choose their partners based on past traumas. And unless you resolve them, you're gonna keep repeating those so-called vasanas, the things that keep repeating. So I think the trick is, first of all, to know yourself very well, okay? And if you know yourself very well and you learn about yourself, then the less need you have for one external validation, and the less need you have for coaches and people that supposedly know, how it's supposed to go. I have a feeling, my personal feeling is that nowadays, no Sadia Khan and no one knows really how to fix this thing. We have a lack of children in the industrial world, whether it's North America, Europe, or Japan. There's very few people actually having enough kids. And even Elon Musk talks about this a lot, and people are not aware of this enough, that, relationships are not working, people are not having children, and you have to ask yourself core questions about society. And then I think the most important nowadays for yourself is not only understanding who you are, where you are, what you want, but being able to work on your unresolved things in order to make the change that you need in this world to get to that. And unfortunately, sometimes these changes need to be radical changes, otherwise you're going to be frustrated your whole life. It's a little bit like, let's say you have a dog living in a shelter, and the dog has, let's say, needs 1 kilo of food every day, okay, but he's receiving 200 grams of food every day. So he's not receiving enough, but he's receiving enough to just survive. And I think what's happening is that we get accustomed to getting those 200 grams per day in our shelter, and we don't have the force, the strength, the energy, the perception to understand that if we change our life into a totally different situation, we could actually get those 1 kilogram, 2 kilograms of food. I mean, it's an analogy for how life right now works. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that they're actually getting those 200 grams, and then they're wondering, why am I frustrated? Why can't I change anything? And I think the very first position, the very first you should take, the very first kind of like idea you should take is, if I thought out of the box and I go super radical, well, like what things could I do to completely change my life in order to get to those 1 kilogram foods every day, okay? Instead of just being complacent with 200 grams. I think that's super, super important. And only then, when you make those changes, you become ready for a better relationship. Because you're like saying, look, I'm not 100% happy in the situation that I am, but I think that if I get a relationship, I'm going to fix that. And that's where most people are. They think a relationship will fulfill the unfulfilled desires in the other parts of their life. And only once you learn the mechanics of moving from 200 gram to 300 gram to 400 gram to 500 gram, only if you learn these mechanics, you are actually becoming attractive to a whole new set of different partners that were not available before while you were in that prison. And sometimes these changes need to be really, like I said, they need to be super radical. And you have to understand that for some men, this could mean, for example, geomaxing, meaning moving to another country, into another culture, right? And maybe not a culture that is, I think a lot like statistically and in probabilities. That's actually advanced statistics was my best course in university. And I didn't even do any homework or I didn't study really. I was just really good at it. And I can recognize patterns and stuff like that. I don't know why, but even it surprised me. Like, I was like, how did I get it like an A+ for it? Not even, working with the material. And so I recognize patterns and I think in probabilities. That's how my brain just like functions. And I think that most of life is actually probabilities. We don't want to see it because we cannot maybe see it, or we believe in the romanticizing of life and all of this stuff. And I mean, I'm hugely spiritual, so I do believe in synchronicities, but I think that most of it is actually probabilities. And if you are in a highly feminist society where 10% don't want to have children, 10%, maybe even 20%, women between 20 and 30 just want to follow their careers. They don't even want to focus on the relationships. It's like secondary. Then you have all of these things, then suddenly you have a range of men between, 16 and 70 years old that, pardon my language, want to fuck the same women between 18 and 25, let's say. They all have that focus on those women in terms of like attractiveness, and these women are not even available. So what's the probability? The probability is that the men instead of recognizing the black pill, okay, this is the situation I'm in, they actually start to increase the competition between themselves. This is what's actually happening. And maybe it's even like a global psyop by, black, what is it called? Black, what's that? I always forget the name. These kind of like huge elite kind of people, Maybe that's even a psyop. I don't know. But it's like, so the men start to compete against each other in order to get kind of the attention of women, Okay, so that's what they're doing. They're basically saying, okay, if I compete even more intensely, that's the whole bro culture thing. That's nothing. The bro culture thing is nothing else than young men or middle-aged men increasing the competition against each other, believing it will make the things with women better. And this is so funny because it's not going to make it better. What it's going to do is that you're gonna get like a little bit of trickle down, like a little bit here and there. You're gonna get a little bit of attention, but what you're not getting is the true relationship that you want, because women are not there anymore, and the competition is so intense that unless you are the guy, okay, then you're just not gonna have the options. And then you're going to have to settle with a woman that's problematic, that's traumatic, that disrespects you, and so forth. And then men are like, and this is where Sadia Khan comes in. It's like, act like this, do this, do that, and then you'll fix the situation. But it's not true, because most of these women do not exist. That's just in your brain. And the probability that one of them is like, oh, this is think about it. Think about it, what I'm just going to say right now. This is exactly the man I wanted to be with. This is exactly the one I wanted to marry. I'm going to have kids with him. What's the probability that this happens nowadays? It might have happened, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. But what's the probability today that it happens? It's just very low. So actually the highest probable chance of you as a man finding the right woman is not becoming more successful, is not changing, how you act, not micromanaging your, looks or whatever. It's literally going into a different culture, a culture which is still where basically North America and Europe were 50 years ago. And then, of course, come the women, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're just taking advantage of them because they're so desperate for money, and that's why you go there." And but it's just a different culture, and people don't. If you haven't lived in different culture, I don't mean like going on a vacation for a week. I'm talking literally about knowing different cultures, knowing their language, knowing how they think. Unless you really know different cultures, you cannot speak derogatively about them. Because the assumption is always, oh, we in Europe, we in North America, we are the best, we're so arrogant, we know everything. That's just not how it is. Relationship is about love and mutual support, not statistics and probabilities. That's correct, but I was talking about the probability for the average person on a mass scale to find love within society in that way. And I think, of course, I'm not conflating two things. I'm saying, okay, if you talk about hundreds of thousands of men, hundreds of thousands of women in a certain society, what's the probability of finding together and starting a relationship, living together for a long time and be happy and have children? Okay, that's one thing. And then we can talk about the other part, which is like finding true love. Okay, I'm not trying to conflate these two things because they're not really always the same. Okay, let's just be honest. You can be in love with someone and the relationship falls apart a year later, and you can not be truly deeply in love with someone like on a soul level, but have a perfect relationship with them. Okay, but what I'm talking about here firstly is the probability in North America or in Europe to find a good relationship in which you feel good and comfortable. And that's very, very low actually. And people don't recognize it because of probabilities and statistics. And because most people don't think in probabilities and statistics, it's not in there. They're not even good in mathematics. So they don't understand it. They don't understand how bad the probabilities are. So if I go on the street right now, and I have this anecdotal experience. So if I go on the street right now in, let's say, in Spain, and Spain is a country where very few women have children. I think it's actually the country in Europe where the least amount of children per woman. So it's like 1.04. And the only reason the statistics is a little bit higher because the Muslim and outside the foreigners in Spain have proportionally higher amount of children. So if I go and hit on a woman here that's 25 years old in Spain on the street, let's just assume I'm a little bit younger than I am, okay? The likelihood that she's not interested, that she already has a boyfriend, that she doesn't even want to have children, that she's looking and focusing on herself right now instead of a relationship, that she wants to focus on career, that she wants to focus on studying, that she doesn't even have the time for a relationship, all these probabilities are extremely high. But if I go to a 25-year-old woman in the Philippines and I do the same thing, I don't think I even have to answer for you to know the answer. It's like the probability that she's interested in having a family, having a relationship, having children, and that she's maybe single is very, very, very high, much higher than North America or in Europe. Okay, and this is these kind of things is good to talk about them because most people don't even realize. And it's interesting then when you have men from North America that go to Mexico, that go to Central South America, and there's like, oh my God, I'm living in a totally different space. And not only that, but feminism has mutated into a feminism where women hate men, consciously or unconsciously. I had a woman that visited me when I was living in Mallorca, and we were sitting at lunch, and we were talking about something, and I could feel that I could sense she had men hate. She really hated men, but she didn't say it superficially. There wasn't like anything in the conversation, but I could feel it energetically. I'm an energy healer, so I can feel these things. I can feel traumas in the air, in the aura. And she said, "Nah, I'm not angry about men." And we continued the conversation. I was like, this is just really crazy. Like, it's in the room. I can feel it. And I think I said it 3 times. And I was like, yeah, I'm super upset about men. So in the end, she confessed to having this anger about men. And whenever I talk to women nowadays, I call this also emotional transport. We're going to talk about this also a lot. Is I can feel that there is a tremendous amount of women that don't have the classic traditional feminism, which is a good thing, in their energy field, but what they have is men hate. They transformed this into men hate, and it comes mostly from emotional transport. A lot of these women, not all of them, but a lot of these women actually don't have a negative experience with men in the sense like truly negative, but what they did is they transformed whatever emotion they received from another woman about men hate and men opinion into their own energy field. So for example, oh my God, what happened to these women with Harvey Weinstein was really bad, and now I hate all men because they're all pigs. Kind of like that kind of attitude. And this is just an example of how emotional transport works. And a lot of women have that, and it was basically instrumentalized through and it was like the emotion that was brought to the masses in this neo-feminist kind of like way where it went away from just fighting for women's rights to fighting basically against men. And this is a huge change. This is a huge change that nobody talks about. You know why nobody talks about it? Because women don't confess to it. But when I make a video, I had a video on Instagram which went viral, which said, Asian women accept me more than other cultures. And this video exploded to 1.6 million views. I wish I hadn't deleted it, but it was very, for people, obviously, I think I had 30,000 negative comments. Okay, it was absolutely brutal. And they misunderstood what I was saying, but because there's so much hate within those cultures, and I do understand the Asian women that were suppressed in a patriarchy, they left that patriarchy and left for the West, let's say, or started a career in Asia, and now they have this massive anger towards what they saw happening in their own families. But the problem is you're shooting yourself in the foot. And this is, I also have negative experiences in my relationships or from my parents, whatever. But it's very important. But this is like, you cannot heal and do therapy with millions of people at the same time. It's just not going to work because it's extremely complex. As an energy healer, I can tell you it's so complex, and you need to be a true master, like a shaman type of person, and you have to work with people individually to get, hate, anger, frustration, all of these things out of the system of people. And here's the thing. If you are a mature person, like me, 47 years old, already had a couple of relationships, know all of these things, I don't want to be a healer in my relationship. I don't want to I'm too old to waste my time, heal someone, because the moment that they're healed, they go into a different energy field. And the moment they're in a different energy field, they might not even want to be with you. So you're actually, that's the huge problem in healing relationships. You might love someone and you might want to heal them in the relationship, but the problem is either it's a codependency where they never get healed and it just drains you of energy, or there's a moment where they get healed and you maybe yourself as well, and then the energy changes and you don't even want to be together anymore. And so this is a massive amounts of wasted time. So you should never get into a relationship which is a healing relationship, which is like, I'm doing this for him, I'm doing this for her, because I hope that because you love them and you want them to see them feel better. Be it like a mental disease, a psychological disease, a body disease, both of it, psychosomatic, whatever it is. You don't want to be a healer in the relationship, because the moment it gets healed, the energy shifts. And then it might not be the right relationship, and you lose a lot of time. You lose years and years and years and years. So you want to heal yourself, and then you want to look for a healed person. And I think, and then of course we go into, and then we like to believe from romanticizing, we love to believe that, that synchronicity will bring us the right partner. But when the probabilities are massively low, even a synchronicity is just not going to happen. It's going to happen maybe for 1 in 10,000 people. And then they will put a video on Instagram. You're like, oh, I wish I had that love, But we're not that good looking. We're not that, we're not that special. We are the ones who fall through the cracks. We are the ones that never get seen, kind of. Those type of people that don't, those are the absolute majority. Those are the 99.9%. The ones that wanted to be successful but had an accident and never became successful, because health didn't allow it, or some form of fate or something like that. And I think that because we romanticize everything and we saw so many movies, we don't want to believe that we are not part of that story, okay? But there's a statistic which says 40% of men, I think it was even higher, that there's a huge percentage of amount of men that never get to procreate. That's a black pill no one talks about. There's a 40% amount of men that never get to procreate. Think about that. I would have to really check the exact statistic, but I heard this now so many times, so I have to check whether it's truly true, but it seems to be. So Bro ain't got a clue what he's on about. He's a second dimension energy, it's alpha bean. Now that I received this toxic metaframe comment, I'm gonna go into toxic metaframing. And there's a tremendous amount of mean person in this world. And they love to be anonymous on the internet and insult people. And so I'm gonna read this comment again, and for everyone who's interested how to understand how to deal with these people, because there's tremendous amounts of them. There's almost 80 to 90% of people in this world are toxic, and I'm going to tell you this. I talked a lot about this on my German channel, and I have different language channels. And for some people, it truly completely changed their life. Like it truly completely changed their life, and I'm going to talk about this now. So there's a dude who says, "Bro ain't got a clue what he's talking about." That's what he's talking on. This is a toxic metaframe, and I tell you where it's coming from. This is a very clear verbal toxic metaframe. You have direct, indirect, verbal, non-verbal toxic metaframe. This is a direct verbal toxic metaframe. Bro ain't got a clue what he's on about. So this is one toxic metaframe. And then the second he mentioned energy, he's off the bean, a second toxic metaframe. So you have two toxic metaframes in basically one sentence, one comment. And where do toxic metaframes come from? I'm not going to define now toxic metaframes. We can do that a little bit later, but just understand these are two toxic metaframes. It comes from libido suppression. This is where the sacral chakra is libido suppressed. There is no joy and no sexuality, or a suppressed joy and sexuality in the sacral chakra. This is the second chakra in the energy system, the main chakra. So, and what happens is that as people are unhappy in themselves, in their body, in their energy field, because they're not conscious enough of what's going on, and this energy shoots up, this blocked energy shoots up to the active consciousness, and they feel kind of this limiting energetic field where they don't feel really happy, they don't feel joyful, and it feels like compressed, and it feels like suppressed. That's why I call it libido suppression, is in short LS or LE, libido empowerment or libido suppression. So LS, libido suppression, because they're not conscious enough that they are actually empowered, they could be empowered and find their own joy and sexuality. What they do is they find they search, they project the source of their unhappiness to the outside. So it's like, you are responsible, and everyone around me and everything around me is responsible for my misery, for my unhappiness. And that's why I'm gonna be toxic to everyone and everything around me where I get the chance, especially where I don't feel that they can touch me, okay? So that's why, especially young men that are highly frustrated, those 40% that never get to procreate and never are enjoying sexuality, they go on the internet, they find someone that they can project their hate onto because they're so unhappy, and they try to suppress the other person so they don't feel joy. Sometimes it's even the sexual hierarchy where they want to suppress the other person so they don't have a chance with the opposite sex. That's another dynamic. It all comes from libido suppression, and that's where all the hate and the negative comments and the attacks happen by other people. So, and what happens is this happens in relationships as well. This is the most brutal part. And I'll tell you, someone who toxic metaframes you in a relationship does not truly love you. They don't truly want to be together with you. They want to abuse you for their own projection. So we're going to talk about that as well. A vampire walks into a bar and asks the bartender for a boiling glass of water. Bartender says, "I thought you vampires only dark blood." Vampire pulls out a used temple and says, "I'm having tea." Okay, good. So the thing is, is you want to understand toxic metaframing, because the moment you understand toxic metaframing, you understand people who are on a low conscious plane, and you don't want to have relationships with them. I'm talking like no relationship, no friendship, no business partnership, no contact whatsoever, physical disconnect. Now, the only time you can accept what they're doing and what they're saying, the only time where you should be doing this is when it benefits the goal you're trying to achieve. So you're actually using them for your goal. And the person who continuously toxic metaframes is actually the pure definition of a narcissist. Okay? So if you recognize toxic metaframing within the first minutes of getting to know someone, then you can immediately recognize whether they're a narcissist or not, and whether you want to deal with them or not. And here comes the thing. In my opinion, the only time where it makes sense to entertain this bullshit is when you want to be an influencer on the internet, because then you can use this negative projection for engagement farming. In real life, when you meet someone who's toxic like that, complete cutoff, no physical contact, not even a single reaction. And it's actually the best thing that you can give to the toxic metaframer, to the narcissist, because only when you disconnect from them physically, totally, and no connection whatsoever, they have to face themselves. So this is actually the biggest gift that you can give them. They will try to find another victim, but if enough people know about toxic metaframing, then this person will be on their own, and they have to reflect on what they're doing, and they'll have to wonder, why am I not getting along with anyone? Why is everybody... The thing is, with narcissists, they always find a victim, because there's enough people who don't have enough self-love and self-esteem to walk away. Plus, they take advantage of something very subtle but very strong also at the same time, is the need to belong, group behavior. Because we are lacking tribes in life, we give way too much attention and energy to individual connections, and we don't learn to walk away. Okay, it's very hard for some people to walk away. So, for example, you're on the street and somebody insults you. If you have a lot of self-love and you understand energetics of the situation, you just walk away. But there's so many people who react because they feel personally attacked, so they react and they over-toxic metaframe. You're stupid, you're stupider, and then they start to fight. That's how wars start. But the smartest person understands the energetics behind it and just walks away. Okay? And this is what you should do in relationships as well. If a person is a toxic metaframer and they're not conscious of what they're doing, just walk away. No, like, why are you doing this? I thought, forget about it. There's literally 0 words, 0 thoughts, just walk away. And I think this is such a powerful tool to learn, to just walk away. I'm not saying you're supposed to walk away from nice people. That would be a toxic metaframe. That would be actually, if you walk away from someone and you don't talk to them, if they're actually nice people, you're actually being the toxic one, because you are saying what is the true definition of a narcissist is someone who truly believes that they're better, or that their life is worth more, or their emotions are more important, or thoughts, than the other person's thoughts, emotions, and life and body, whatever. That's a true narcissist. And this is the biggest learning you can do, and this is like the biggest thing you can learn in life. When somebody's toxic to you, learn to walk away without saying a word and never having any contact with them ever again. This is the biggest learning you will ever do, because there's something hidden behind it, which is called self-love. And the self-love is actually the ability to act on your highest harmony. So the equation of self-love is self-love equals the ability to act on your highest harmony. A lot of people don't know this. They're like, what is self-love? I don't know what self-love is, but it's literally, it's the ability to act on your highest harmony. That means in this very moment in time, what gives you the highest harmony? And you just follow that. You just act on what right now you feel would give you the highest harmony. And that's actually self-love. And only when you do that without compromise, then you are actually in your most powerful field. Because as long as you don't do this, you're actually a victim of your own lack of self-love. You don't come into this powerful, energetic field of self-love. And a lot of people don't know this. Okay? So, and I think I don't want to. This is also something that a lot of people misunderstand. So, and this is where a lot of frustration comes from. So you can work on all of these things. You can work on self-love. You can be more harmonious to yourself. You can walk away from narcissists. You can recognize toxic metaphraming and so forth. You can do all of these things, but the probability of you finding the right partner doesn't necessarily increase. You could say, okay, my energetic field has changed. And because of that, I attract different types of situations and people. That does happen to a certain degree. But if you were living on an island and you would be alone on this island, you're not meeting your partner, whatever change you made inside. So probabilities do make a lot of sense, and synchronicity is not going to have someone crash land on that island and then you'll be like living happily ever after on that island. That's why I'm saying we romanticize these things, but they're not reality. So just by becoming a better person, being more conscious, let's call it an evolution of yourself. Okay, there's an evolution. Doesn't mean you find the perfect partner. It literally doesn't mean it, because probability is just maybe isn't there in the city you live in and the way you live, whatever. That's why I'm saying that if it's so important for you to find the right partner, then you have to make radical changes. And usually at the bottom of this radical change is the ability to let go of true deep fear. And that's very, very confronting and very radical for a lot of people. The deepest fear that you have, and many people don't want to talk about this. When I talk with people about, fear of death, fear of pain, fear of disease, all of these things, there is a huge avoidance mechanism. But the thing is that it's actually exactly that which is keeping you in the prison. Because the moment that you lose all deep, true fear in your root chakra is where you automatically, without even thinking about it, have the capacity to make huge changes in your life. Think about, for example, one of the things that people say when they become massively financially successful, and then they make a podcast and you listen to them, and there's a common denominator for all of these people. Their ability to take huge amounts of risks, but not in a fearful way. So let's say you have 10,000 euros or dollars, okay? And you're like, I'm going to invest this money. There's so many people. I have a friend like this, for example, who wouldn't even, he has so much fear to touch that money because he feels that if something breaks in the house, I'm gonna need that money, and maybe something breaks in 5 years, and then I'm gonna need that money to repair it. Otherwise, I have a real problem, like if it's the heating or something like that. And so he's confined within the prison of his own fear without recognizing it. Okay? And for some people it makes sense to be fearful and they think it's so important, but it's actually killing your entire joy and your ability to enjoy life. and it's like this emotional prison that you're not even really aware of. And these people that become so successful, they have, for either karmically or because they worked on themselves, most of it is just luck, the way they were born and raised. They don't have this fear in their root chakra. And this is what you recognize with highly successful CEOs. All of them, almost all of them, some of them have a strong sense of fear, and that's what makes them successful, but most of them, they don't have any fear in their root chakra, or very little. And so that's why they seem like adventurous type of people. Look at someone like Larry Ellison, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. All of these people, like, I'm just taking like examples of people that we know, or Tom Cruise, people that we know that are highly successful. Look at what they have in common. It's all a lack of fear of death in a very deep sense way. That's why they're able to move so freely with lots of energy. Because if your root chakra is not blocked, you have a lot more energy than other people that have a root chakra blocked. And then you can make huge changes. So if you have no fear of death, imagine you had no fear of death right now. What would you be able to do that you before were not able to do? There's tons of things. You could move to an entire new country. You could, start a completely new business. You could, if there's absolutely no fear of death, which translates also to no fear of failure, it's the same thing, then you become free to really try and do everything. And then you recognize how much freer you feel. So the inability to feel free is directly connected to the fear of death. And the interesting thing is that which holds you from success is actually the fear of death. Okay? And I'm not talking about success only financially. I'm talking literally on every plane. So if you were to say, I want to be successful in relationships, I want to meet a lot of women or men, and I want to find the right one, or I want to be found, you need to increase your probabilities. And the way to increase your probabilities is most likely going to be tied to whether you can release some of that deep fear or not. So for me, it's not a big secret. For me, if I were to take a plane tomorrow to the Philippines, I probably have more women than I can ever put in my daily, waking hours. Or just one woman that I spend, as much time as I want with. But if I'm in Europe and I try to speak to a girl on the street and take her out for lunch, she'll be like, no, thank you. I already have something with my best female friend. We're going to do something else. It's just this just how it is. You need to think in terms of these probabilities, and you will see that if you think in terms of probabilities, your life becomes much, 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 much better. Rather than thinking of romanticizing, like, I'm gonna do law of attraction and I'm gonna do this and that. By the way, law of attraction, it's a big thing. Okay. Doing things like law of attraction has a huge drawback that people don't think about. Now, this goes a little bit deeper, but the problem is you end up a little bit like Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey, who got everything he ever wanted, became famous, millionaire, did, the movies they wanted to do, whatever. And in the end, he said he wasn't happy. And you could see it on his face. He literally wasn't happy. Okay. But he used the law of attraction, the law of visualization, all of this stuff. He used that. He even talked about it publicly that he used that. And then eventually he found to Eckhart Tolle, which helped him escape all of this bullshit. The reason is this. When you say to yourself, I want something specific, then you're actually using your mind, okay? So you're using your ego, your personality, your conditioned mind. And I'm saying, I want to have money. Okay, so for example, I want to have money. So I visualize with a visual board and all of, other things. You visualize like, I want to have money. So you visualize these things, and then you always have it in the back of your mind. It's a little bit like with the fear thing. Not only are you projecting a lack of something, you don't have abundance in this moment because you're actually projecting a lack. I want this thing, which I don't have right now. I'm going to go, I know what a lot of people are going to say who are into law of attraction, so bear with me. I know what you're going to say. You have to feel as if you already have it. Wait. You will always know for a fact that you don't have it right now. You don't have $1 million on your bank account. If you don't have it, but you don't have $1 million on your bank account, and you can visualize as much as you want, and you can believe it as much as you want. When you swipe that card while you're shopping, you know there's not $1 million on there. So you can visualize it and holographically believe it as much as you want. You don't have that money. Okay? So you're actually communicating to the universe, I desperately need that. I don't have abundance. And you're keeping it in your mind on a shelf all the time. And now what happens is, as you visualize and do these kind of things, you will get a little bit of synchronicities that reflect that in your real life. Okay? So just like Jim Carrey. So suddenly, for example, you get a raise in your company, or your work changes, you change your job, you get a little bit more money, whatever. Could be anything. And that will give you to the mind the idea that law of attraction is working. And so you start to enter the hype phase of law of attraction. Oh my God, it's working. Oh my God, it's working. Okay, so it's like a dopamine hit to your hormonal system. And you go from one dopamine hit, like if you get heroin in your veins, and you're waiting for the next moment. So you're actually not in your true centered power. You're actually flying high up there, waiting for the next hit to come. And I noticed something when I did Law of Attraction in 2009, so like 16 years ago, because I wanted to try it out. I noticed something very interesting. You get these dopamine hits because you are experiencing very interesting things, but you recognize something, you're not truly happy. You're not truly happy. What is happening is that you are reveling in the dopamine hits of what supposedly is happening, but you're not truly happy. And I did then a very profound meditation, and I found out that what we truly want is that things work out for us in a kind of natural way, not an artificial way where we need to push things. And that recognition for me was super profound. Like, it was like, we want things to work out kind of like because they're meant for us, rather than we pushed so much in order to get them. And that's why a lot of people that have in their mind they need to become successful in their field and they become really good, they never reach this kind of true happiness. And that's why I'm saying that true happiness is connected with, on one side, knowing your soul plan, and on the other side, lifestyle design, where those two overlap, where you are designing your life the way you want it, and at the same time you're fulfilling your soul mission. And when these two things overlap, you instantly become happy, and it has nothing to do with money. It can have to do with money, but it could be anything, basically, as long as you're following your soul plan and you're doing a lifestyle design. The good thing is we're living in a time where it's ever more possible to follow your lifestyle design because we have the tools to do it. And a lot of people make the mistake, instead of coming into their self-empowerment, to listen to people like Sadia Khan, where they feel like she has the answers to their problems. But the answers are actually lying within you by using the tools that you have in order to design your life. So you have to make it very clear to yourself what type of life you want, think about probabilities, and then do lifestyle design in order to get there. Okay? But with the understanding of what your true soul plan is, so your true soul mission. And for the part of relationships, trust me on this one, it has all to do with the culture and the probabilities, the culture you're living in and the probabilities that are given in your environment. Because if you are, say for example, I'm sapiosexual. Okay, so for me, it's super important that the woman is smart. If she's really dumb, it's a toughie for me. It's really not. That's almost like it's a deal breaker. It's a non-negotiable. She needs to be in some formal way smart and conscious and aware, and she cannot be like a follower. Like, oh, I'm just gonna get the jab and everything is fine. You know, that type of person. It must be someone who can think for themselves. And if say I go somewhere, let's say academically, if I go, let's say, into the hood, okay, into the projects, and I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna meet my woman there. I mean, what's the likelihood? Instead of going, let's say, to your university of, I don't know, like natural sciences, okay. If I go to University of Natural Sciences and let's say I'm a professor there, PhD professor or something, then the likelihood of me finding the perfect woman is much higher. Just to give you an example. I mean, it could be anything. And people don't think in probabilities. And I think that's what makes most people unsuccessful in life. And even if you can't think of probabilities, you need to let go of fear. So you actually have these two elements. One thing is you need to think of probabilities, and the second thing is you need to think of letting go of fear. By the way, one of the most powerful ways to let go of fear is vipassana. And that's why more and more people talk about it, because it's a little bit like the ayahuasca thing. More and more people are talking about, you know, these kind of like rituals and tools to spiritually grow, and it's being shared more and more also on YouTube. So you have to let go of fear using these kind of tools, vipassana or ayahuasca or whatever. But you must also understand that everything has its probability. And like if you do psychedelics, the probability that you fuck your brain is very high. I met this Eduardo, a Spanish surfer here in Spain. And on the first day, it felt like we have a lot in common, and it felt like super interesting, but he already had a lot of experience with psychedelics. And the second day, you know, you always need like 24 hours being with someone to really start to see like their true nature. I started to see the typical kind of signs of his brain being burned out by drugs. And I was like, and he was trying to get me onto psychedelics. But the more I was listening to him, the less I was interested, and I realized at some point that he's actually pretty toxic. And because at the very beginning, people are smart; they don't want to show their true character. I mean, look at Sadia Khan. Sadia Khan is in that sense, she's smart because she learned how to hide the way she is. What always surprised me is that the comments never blew up in her, like the negative comments she was giving to her viewership in responses on her Instagram, that nobody ever talked about it. I think it's because she never reached it. It needed to reach a certain fame point before people were like, okay, now I'm gonna take time to look at it, because it also gives you the, like, if you can take a celebrity or a famous person that really blew up and has like 1 million subscribers or something or more, then, and it becomes your business. It can become your business, like that Goob guy or whatever his name is, Goog. it's his business to do this type of stuff. And it doesn't make sense to do it with someone who has 5,000 subscribers. So the moment you really blow up, you have the paparazzi, the journalists, the kind of people who expose that really can take the time to look at it deeply and make profit off it. That's the way they make their living. And that's how it all started with her. She says a lot of right things. No, I don't think she does. So someone in the comments she says a lot of right things. No, I don't think she does. I listened to a couple of videos from her, and anytime I saw a podcast, I don't saw it as very truthful what she said. Actually, I felt always very superficial and not getting to the core of things. And I think it works probably. It would be interesting to know what her viewership is like, but I think they're probably not that smart. I don't think that people who watch Sadia Khan are necessarily smart. I think that anybody who has people knowledge and who is settled in their life and has a good sense, a good grasp of things and of general things in life, like about women, about relationships, and so forth. I think that they don't listen to her. I think it's a certain type of subset of men that listen to her. And I think also that she given her ethnic background, I think also that she pulls more like different ethnic background men into her field, rather than, for example, white older men. I don't think like there's a lot of like 40-year-old men that are like listening to her and be like, oh, okay, whatever, man, she's winning. She's allowed to speak by themselves. Good luck to you. She's winning. Well, she's not winning. Apparently you haven't heard the news. So she's not winning. And I think you have to be careful about, blank statements like she's winning. What does it mean she's winning? What is she truly winning? So I cannot help that you feel triggered, but she's not winning. And what results are actually speaking by themselves? I mean, just because someone has success, financial success, for example, doesn't mean that and this is actually in the beginning of the stream, this is exactly what I said. I said that when you hit the algorithm, and the algorithm, which is pretty much the same, the Instagram, TikTok, YouTube algorithm, they're all the same. They use all the same metrics to blow up, to make certain videos viral or not. So if controversial, polarizing, or videos make it to the top, and people know how to, you could almost say it much simpler. These people are good at one thing, and only one thing mostly, and that is knowing how to trigger the algorithm. It's like Mr. Beast. He knows how to trigger the algorithm. That's how he became the largest YouTuber in the world. But what value are really in his YouTube videos? Maybe in the way what he does with the money. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. Who knows? But the actual value of his YouTube videos, that bullshit entertainment, that's interesting for 15-year-old kids, maybe, or 12-year-olds. I don't know. So if you are saying she's winning and the results speak for themselves, you're actually just saying, okay, she knows how to manipulate the algorithm. That's what you're saying. Great, fantastic. So perfect for her. But it's actually because she's doing it in a field that requires some kind of competence. You cannot go out and call yourself Sadia Khan psychology and give psychological and relationship advice, and at the same time faking your degrees and kind of like competence. It just doesn't work. Eventually it will just blow up in your face. I mean, for example, I have a master's, I have an MBA in business administration. I never studied, apart, from basic courses, I never studied psychology on a like a PhD level or something like that, where you would go and knew about Carl Jung and everything that he wrote about, famous philosophers and psychologists and all of these things. And I'm almost an anti-intellectual. I'm more like, what if I would be more comparable to a naive yogi sitting in meditation, in terms of like intellectual content in this realm. But I do know energetics. I do know nadis, chakras. I know that they are actually the source of our psychological and our karmic aura. Those are the true drivers of our behavioral patterns. But most people cannot see it. So if you cannot see it, that your karma and your energetics are actually the drivers of your behavioral patterns, more and more people are becoming aware of it, especially women more than men, because men do not want, men feel it very unmasculine, not masculine to deal with their own emotions, to deal with their energetics and so forth, and so they don't want to look at that. Women at least understand that is part of their behavioral patterns a lot of times. So more and more women understand, but more men are coming as well, where there's like, okay, I have this trauma from childhood, this is why shit keeps repeating. I have karma, this is why shit keeps repeating. And unless you deal with these things, this happens mostly for people that are 30 years or older, because they already made some experiences that kept repeating and they lacked some kind of success in some part of their life, and they started to question, like, why is this always happening to me? Why am I attracting always the same person, or the same situations? And so they question these things. And good for us that we live in a high tech information society, where we can go on the internet and then search for solutions. And then come people like me from Far East philosophy and understanding of these kind of things like yoga system, tai chi, qigong, all of these things. And then we can help people that are not yet exposed to this kind of information to be like, okay, I didn't know this. I didn't know, that actually it's my chakras that are, not in alignment. What I found smart was the simple way she explained how men or women think. Now she lost everything, Alberto. Her looks and background also helped in her success. Yeah, I think everybody's very clear, and this is such an interesting case, actually, the Sadia Khan case, because it shows a couple of things. If we look at it, I'm gonna read your comment then again, but I want to talk about something which is super interesting. How do people like her rise to fame? And why does it happen? And why is it that people like her then turn out to be completely frauds? And I don't want to take her, I want to take her as an example of something that happens across the board. And it always happened. I mean, look at Bernie Madoff. That's, these kind of like hedge fund. I mean, there's a lot of fake people out there. There's a lot of fake people out there. And they manage to find success. And I think there are two types of successful people, okay, that become very famous. That, one is the good-looking person. Let's give an example: Brad Pitt, Johnny Depp. Okay, they're maybe also talented, given that, but they're mostly good-looking, because if they were just talented but very ugly, it wouldn't be enough. So they're good-looking and talented. Okay, those are like the unicorns of society. There are not many of them. they automatically rise. They get so much attention that they would have to completely fuck it up to not rise. Okay? And especially for women, it's like that. Like, if a woman is talented and good looking, she would really have to work on fucking it up. For example, talented and good looking, Whitney Houston. Okay? But she fucked it up because she had the karmic field of, having people around her that pushed her into drugs and so forth, and bad relationships. But she's the typical example of good looking. George Michael, good looking and talented. Okay, those are the unicorns. Those are the people we kind of like to look at, okay, and listen to. And then you have the frauds. They're mostly the narcissists. They're the ones, I get whatever I want to get because I want it and I don't care about others. Those are the Donald Trump type of people. Not necessarily good looking, not necessarily very talented, but they have a strong solar plexus and there's like, I'm going to get what I want. That's what I learned from somewhere, and I can even lie, I can gaslight, I'm just going to get there, okay? And that's why he excels in every field, okay? And excels, I mean, in the sense like he is from a purely like success perspective in terms of like, does he make money? Is he famous? And so forth. And with Sadia Khan, you have a little bit of a mix between those two. Because on one hand, I really wonder what she looks like without makeup, to be honest. I don't think she's that, good looking. I don't even find her good looking like that, but I understand that many men feel she's good looking. I don't find her good looking, but doesn't matter. So let's just say most men see her as good looking, okay? But most men also don't have style, so whatever. So most men feel that she's good looking. Her voice is very soothing in a way. Okay. The interesting thing is in the podcast, her voice seems much more soothing than when she does a presentation on her personal YouTube. I find it very hard to listen to her. I don't find it enjoyable listening to her on her YouTube. But in a podcast, it's fine. But I think she is the type of person, narcissist, where it's like, I'm going to get what I want no matter what. I think she does have that a little bit as well. So I think she's a blend of those two things. And I think but she doesn't have the full package. And I think that it's also interesting how it will play out, like in the future. Is that her end of her career? Is like that the end of it? How long will it go on that people talk about her in that sense? I think it always has to do with how famous you already are. So if you are, let's say, if like somebody like Mr. Beast is world famous, okay, everybody knows him that is in the influencing space, or younger people that definitely know him. If those people fuck up, it's a lot of times it's the end, because they can also emotionally not work through it. A lot of times it's the end, not always, but they also have a lot of power, so they can move around information in a way that, they level the kind of like the drama. They can just call someone and be like, let's suppress these videos and so forth. Some of these have the power, some of these people, because there's a lot of money involved. But if you have less viewership, this is a little bit like the Tate situation when he started out. If your viewership is not that big yet, you can have high controversy and then smoothen it out later. This is what Tate did, basically. He became famous very controversial. And then by gaslighting, he basically smoothed it out at the end. And so he retained a lot of his status and image by smoothing it out a little bit later. Now, Sadia Khan is somewhere in the middle, I think. I think she is not really super famous, but a lot of people already saw her. And I think the damage is pretty brutal. So I don't know if she can still find more people and smoothen it out. And I do think that these type of I think it would be very hard for her, for example, to release a book and have success with the book unless she puts something in the book where, you know, just being a professional relationship coach and putting out a book, I think would make it more difficult with controversy like this. I think she would have to put something in the book which she would have to play into the drama. So I'd say if I were her PR agent, I would play into the drama and actually kind of hyping it up even more, kind of like that, instead of trying to smoothen it out and then be like the drama bitch of relationships, because then she can blow up even more. And she would have to play into the feminist narrative. I can do whatever I want, you know, and the narcissistic feminist narrative. The problem though is that her clients are men, so she would have to switch up, you know, who she is. It's interesting. I'm just brainstorming like how she can get out of this, because but I think it's truly part of her traumatic psyche, and I think so it's going to play out a lot, and she's going to have to face it, and either she needs to face it in a therapy or she needs to like instrumentalize it for even more fame. The good thing nowadays, everyone forgives so quickly. I think 20 years ago, if that happened 20 years ago, her career would be over. I don't think that is the case anymore. I think that if you have a certain fame and you play into that fame, you make it your own. You make that drama your own drama, and you make that part of your story arc. Then, like Tate does, then I think you can continue being in the center, let's say, of all of this. But I think if she plays kind of like she tries to hide it, she tries to, you know, suppress it, then it's probably going to have a Barbra Streisand effect, and it's going to get even worse. And then she's going to have to find a different line of work, maybe. But it's interesting that even though this kind of exploded in her face, there's still going to be tons of people who believe her shit. And obviously also interesting is that she has a lot of followers which are obviously not very good in English. So they're not American, they're not English. So she has a lot of followers probably from all over the world which don't even speak proper English, it seems. And that are like fanboys of her. So it's also very interesting. I don't know if they're Pakistani or where they're coming from. Shut up, beta. TDS is real and Trump keeps winning. So shut up, beta. Beta is also a toxic metaframe, and I'm using normally in my real life, I would completely disconnect physically from these people, and I used to block them on my socials. But now I let those people completely run whatever they want to say. And because, for example, if you're live, it gives you messages per minute. That's a metric on YouTube Live. And the more messages per minute you have, the more your stream is going to get recommend it to others. And I've tested this on my German channel, where I used to have it locked down so only subscribers could comment, and then I open it up, and it changed like from 30 to 60 viewers per stream. Per at any moment in time, like viewers at the same time. It changed like to 100 and 150 at the same time, because it started and subscribership went up a lot. So, and this is the thing, like, you have to learn. If you are online, you have to learn to deal with this. You have to learn with the negativity, the toxic metaframers, the narcissist, the libido suppressed people, the insults, the moment you try to block it out, you're actually saying, I'm not ready for growth. It's just like, if you want to talk about it, it has to do with the algorithm, but if we were talking like metaphysically or spiritually, you're basically saying, I cannot deal with it, so I'm not ready for growth. And the trick is really to learn to run with it. And so even if I get insulted, like shut up beta and stuff like that, let it be there. And there's also another thing which I think it's more for men than for women. Well, actually for women it's the same, but I think they feel different, a little bit different about it. Like when you get insulted as a woman on the internet, you take it personally, and let's say you're a YouTuber and you get insulted as a woman, you take it personally and you internalize it. And I think men do the same thing, but for men it activates more like the fight response. So you want to fight the person, you know? And I think it's super important, if you want to be a successful, influencer or something like that, that you learn to deal with these internalized reactions on these things, because you cannot go and just ignore all comments. It's just not how it works. You have to deal with the community that you have. And sometimes, you read through things. There's a lot of, I think this is so interesting, the psychological factors and the psychological reactions of trying to be present in our online society. I mean, think about all the people that commit suicide, the people that, commit mass murders and school shootings, and think about how social media shapes the way we react emotionally and our, maturity in that regard and everything. And I'm really looking at myself and noticing how I react to everything and how I deal with it. And I think that you can be completely phlegmatic, and it can be your character where you're like, I don't give a shit, and just follow your mission, your goal. But the truth is that most influencers actually take it very personally, and they deal with it. They have a tough time dealing with it. They don't say it in their videos, but sometimes they make these kind of confession videos where they will say it does influence them. And I'm micro watching myself. I'm watching how do I react on things, and what my power is, coming back to understanding that the true self is not even affected by whatever is being said. And I think it's also a form of like sadhana, almost like a spiritual exercise. When Ramana said, ask yourself, who are you truly? I think it's super interesting, like when you recognize your own personal reaction on something, to like go back into the field of like, who's this who's reacting on it? Who is this who feels bothered by it, And then just work through that, literally work through that in order to free yourself from that. And then when you're freed from that, and you don't react personally anymore, you can instrumentalize it. And I think this is something that Sadia hasn't yet mastered, obviously. So when she receives something that bothers her, she goes on full attack mode. She actually has a masculine reaction to it. And that can only stem from childhood trauma. There's no other way. And what I'm doing now is I'm instrumentalizing whatever toxic person finds my channel and wants to comment, insult me. I'm actually instrumentalizing it for the goal that I want to achieve. But if it were in real life, I would cut out the person completely. So there's two totally different ways of reacting based on what I need at that moment or what I want at that moment. But the most healthiest way is to completely cut out a toxic person from your life. Completely. Like no connection whatsoever. And of course, it also depends like what topics you're talking about. If you have a certain set of viewership, for example, if you have only women as a viewership and the videos are about empowerment, the likelihood that there will be negative comments are much less. Like in comparison to if you talk about something which is very broad and everybody is kind of interested in it. So then you get a lot of idiots also. And I think social media is so interesting because it does a lot of things that we are absolutely not yet aware of and nobody talks about it. Think about, for example, the amount of psychopath, the amount of psychopath and problematic people, seriously problematic people for mental diseases, whatever, how many are actually on social media and YouTube and watching content because they don't have any kind of healthy relationship outside of that. And so they try to connect with the world through that lens. And so the probability that they're online active is more likely than they're active offline. And so when you are streaming, when you're making videos, and that includes Sadia Khan and everybody else, is how many psychos are out there. You have like no fucking idea. I did once the statistics for myself when I was younger. I was like making various probabilities. Well, nowadays you could use an AI to do this. Oh, this would be super interesting. I think we should do this. Is basically, I'm going to make a video today about this. How many people are really bad fucking shit crazy? And what's the probability of that they actually end up on your YouTube channel? And I think it's fairly high. So what I'm saying is that you take it personally to be insulted or called out or anything on your YouTube or social media, and you're like, oh my God, because what we do also, we project that the other person is like you. You know, everybody does this. You think that because you are like this is how you view the world, you think that everybody else is like you. But it's not true. Some people are really bad fucking shit crazy out there. So really bad fucking shit crazy. So you read the comment, and because it's an anonymous comment, you're like, oh my God, somebody like me thinks bad about me. This is what unconsciously happens. Oh my God, somebody like me thinks bad about me. But if you saw the other person in a straitjacket, in some kind of psychiatric ward, and you would get the same comment, let's say you have the same comment, two different people, two different scenarios. One is sitting in his home office in a villa, which is worth $20 million with a great view and, I don't know, infinity pool in the background. But you get the same comment. Or you get the same comment from a person in a psychiatric ward, okay? The same comment, literally the same comment. You will have a totally different feeling about the comment. Think about this. And this is what social media does to us, that because we project everything that we read to be the same, that the person is the same as you are, you're taking it much more personal than you should. because the other person maybe is batshit fucking crazy and lives in the basement. So think about this. And with that said, the whole thing about being an influencer and then, you know, being exposed like Sadia Khan and everything, it's all this kind of like mud of this kind of energy. It's all there, okay? And we in that mud, you as an influencer, you're trying to find the diamonds and make money off it, basically. But the mud is there, you know. So you have to learn to navigate this, and it's a totally different beast. It's not like you come onto television like 20 years ago, you make an interview, and then you go home and sell a bunch of books. This is a totally different beast, and no one ever talks about it. No one ever talks about, you know, the intricate like dynamics of social media and what it does to children, to your mind, to relationships. No one ever talks about it because it's so complicated that no one even knows where to start. So they pick simple topics like how to improve your relationship, you know, by, you know, high value, low value men. I don't know, bullshit like that. But there's something else going on in our society that actually no one talks about, which has a much bigger influence. Think about, you know, your children being on social media. And they're receiving comments or being in contact with those psychopath people. It's crazy. Think about, you know, what happens on Roblox. I mean, it's all fucking crazy. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave it at that for now. And I'm gonna have tons of great content. Feel free to subscribe. You're gonna learn a lot of shit on my YouTube channel. If you can see past, you know, your projection of, you know, insulting me or something like that, you will see that I have very, very cool information to share. And I wish you a nice day, and see you soon.